This is a demonstration for an 8-head high figure. Um, One of the things that I do first is I give myself a border for my paper, which becomes my ground line for the figure. And it also helps frame the figure. It keeps it, and it helps keep my figures to where they all stay in this same plane, meaning that when I line up the renderings together, say to show a director, they're all standing on the same ground, and I don't have like one figure that's sort of floating up here and another figure floating down there, that they all live on the same ground. When determining the height of your figures, typically you take the height of you can take the actual height of the actor or kind of generalized height. Women typically tend to be 5 foot, or more female oriented tend to be 5'3" to 6'7" is kind of average. And more masculine figures tend to be anywhere from 5'10" to, I actually had one actor who was like, he's a former football player, so he was almost 7 feet tall. But so that it can be a range of many things. But for average, anywhere from 5'10" to about 6'2", 6'3". So you have those heights, and then what you do is you double that number, and then on the ruler, the number of inches, that becomes the height. So if I have a 5-foot more feminine figure, then that is a 10-inch figure. And say I have a 6-foot masculine figure, that would be a 12-inch figure. If, the piece of paper that I'm using is an 11 by 15, so that gives me a lot of space to draw. If I'm doing, say, an 8 by 10, then I will sort of cheat the figures, the heights down a little bit. But for this one, I'll start with the more feminine figure, and I'm going to do the heights at like 10.5. So that would be 5'2", technically. Once I get what I like to think of as my center line, dancers will refer to this as their center of gravity. I will give myself a little mark for where the top of the head goes, and then of course my feet are down here. I will roughly eyeball where center is, and then I'll divide the two halves into 4. So there's 1, 2, 3, and that becomes space number 4. And then 1, 2, 3, and 4. 3 and 4, and that becomes my 8 heads. And what we refer to as heads high is that if I were to draw 8 heads on top of each other, that becomes the basic proportion for a figure. If you're doing fashion figures, those are going to be 9 heads tall or 10 heads tall. So you would do the height and divide that into 9 or 10 sections. So that's why, fashion tends to do those very elongated figures. But in theater, since we're dealing with more average height people, then we do an 8. In the 50s, it used to be like a 6.5, 7 head high figure for drawing. If you look at old figure drawing books, that you'll find that. So the neck and shoulders split the next section. And a difference between more feminine figures and masculine figures is with a feminine looking figure, it will have a thinner neck. Masculine, the neck would roughly be the same width as the head. Again, a little bit more narrower shoulders on feminine, where with masculine it's a little bit broader. With the waist on a feminine is going to be hips are going to be a little more curved. Masculine would be more straight. Our elbow is roughly at the waist, so that's where our arm bends. And then our fingertips hit about mid-thigh. So, let me sketch these in. When we're looking at our feet, typically when we look down, we see the tops of our feet. But when we're looking at somebody, say like standing on the stage, we're going to just see the very tip of the shoe, you know, and if the foot is turned like that, we'll actually see more of the shoe. So once I get the figure down, then I'll go in and erase, you know, my guidelines. And then I will start adding the clothing on top. So when I'm generating a lot of renderings, I will prep my paper and get my borders in. And I will also put like the name of the show, my character, and if I have my casting, I'll add the name of the actor, because it gives the actor a sense of ownership. And then also when you give your renderings to your shop, they don't have to look at the cast list to try to figure out who everybody is. All of the information is on the rendering. So that way it's easier for your shop to go through the renderings and be able to get all of the information that they need and look through get the whole show. So that's the basic beginning of figure drawing. So